Everyone has a story. It may not be glamorous or filled with adventure, but it's theirs. Welcome to Lifting with Larry, the podcast that features the unique stories of everyday passengers from the world of rideshare.
Bonnaroo 2020.
All right,
so
Blake.
we're going to open it with that.
No doubt. No, we'll close with that. That'll be our closing. Oh, my goodness. That was hilarious. Welcome to Lifting with Larry, the podcast where I sit down and talk with some of the interesting passengers that I've met while driving rideshare for Lyft and Uber. I think it'd be a really safe bet to say that my guest today has probably ridden with me more than anybody else during my rideshare career. He is a senior at Western Kentucky University. He's a photojournalism major. He was staff photographer for the Atlanta Braves 2 years ago. He's an extremely talented young man. He's got a bright future in front of him. And just really happy to have him here. So, Nick, thanks a lot for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
Hey, so why don't we start out just talking a little bit about kind of how our paths intersected and crossed and how we got to know each other and why you've been riding around with me so much the last few weeks.
Well, I came across you on Instagram. I feel like there's two ways to cross paths with you. It's either via Instagram or happen to get you as a Uber or Lyft driver. And I was the previous. I saw you on Instagram, and for a while I was just following you because it was interesting. You know, I'd never seen somebody doing something like that before. A friend of mine, Reed Madison, he was on your Instagram account, and that's kind of how I found out about it. And so I followed you on Instagram for a while, and then I've recently been getting into documentary film production and making documentaries and whatnot. And I thought maybe I should reach out to you and see if I couldn't ride along with you for a little bit and document what goes on inside of an Uber or a Lyft car on a weekend night in Bowling Green. And that's kind of how it came to be.
So yeah, we've ridden together probably 4 or 5 times, I think, over the last several weeks.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun. Enjoyed having somebody ride along with. That's a different experience. We're usually out there by ourselves. I do have a group of guys and gals that I talk with on a chat program called Telegram. That's you do voice chat on there. And most of the guys are up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but we also have a guy down in North Carolina and one up in Missouri. We have one in Chicago, Ohio, I think one in Hawaii. So there's a big mix of people, but the most part of them are up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But it is a community of drivers, and we can talk back and forth and just share stories, swap stories, and give each other a bunch of crap about different stuff and a lot of jokes. And it was funny because they actually got to know Nick as we were riding along. I introduced Nick to the group, and we did a little video. Actually, even one night you can do a video chat on there, and introduced him. And the guys got concerned about Nick a few times.
Well, yeah, talk about that. We kind of ran into trouble whenever you'd have to pick up 4 people.
Exactly, yeah. So what happens is, technically we're not supposed to have anybody with us riding. So what happened is whenever we would come up to a group of people, if they had less than 4 people, I would get out and talk to them and tell them what Nick was up to, and that he's shooting this documentary about rideshare, and ask if they are okay if he rides with us, and if not, he would just stay wherever I'm picking them up at. And I don't think we had anybody ever have a problem with him. They were always intrigued more than anything.
Yeah.
First, they wanted to know what he was doing, with his camera, and then why he was shooting a documentary about me.
Yeah, and definitely as the nights went on, got later and later into the nights, people seem to be way more open to the idea of
definitely, yeah, they get a little bit looser as the night goes on, for sure. But what was so funny, especially the first night, but I think even a few other nights too, probably half the rides, I think 4 out of the first 5 rides that we did, either you knew the people we were picking up or I knew the people that we were picking up. So it was kind of funny, just the way that worked out.
That was so funny because, like I said, I was so nervous when we were going to pick up the very first passenger. How are they going to react to somebody sitting in the front of the car, you know, with a camera and whatnot, and we pull up, and of course I knew them, so that made it easy. Yeah. And you knew the next person, and I knew the next person.
And by that time, you felt comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool. It was neat. But there were times when we would pull up, and there would be 4 passengers, and so Nick would just hop out, and wherever I was picking them up, he would hop out.
I sat on some little. Let's see. One time I sat on a curb for 20 minutes, and one time I sat on a small brick wall for 20 minutes, just in random places in Bowling Green, waiting for you to come back.
But what was so funny is the guys on my Telegram chat, they would be worried about Nick. I would tell them what had happened. They're like, "No, don't leave Nick. Don't leave Nick again. Please don't leave Nick." So they were looking out for him. It was pretty funny. Pretty funny times. So what was your impression, I guess, or things that you learned about rideshare that you hadn't really thought about before?
Well, let's see. I was mostly surprised at how comfortable, you know, people were with me being in the car. That was really nice. I honestly learned a lot through watching some of the dash cam footage that we ended up using in the documentary. I feel like things were a little different when I was in the car because people are going to behave differently and whatnot.
They do, definitely.
But it's kind of like being a fly on the wall in an Uber car. I guess it's pretty similar to like the taxi experience, but I feel like with rideshare, it's a little bit more conversational and whatnot. And it's just interesting to see how those conversations play out. I mean, you're always getting asked, you know, how many years have you been driving?
You do get the same questions.
The same questions.
What's your craziest ride? Has anybody ever puked in your car?
Yep.
Is this your full-time job? Yep. Yeah, you get a lot of the same questions.
And it's always funny to watch, you know, just a big group of friends pile in the car, and they just kind of continue to exist as if they were all still like at the bar together, you know, talking back and forth and, you know, showing each other their phone screens, like, you know, text messages, phones, talking about drama and gossip and all that stuff. And Larry, you're just up front, just getting them safely to their destination.
You just take it all in.
Yeah.
You take it all in.
Yep.
And it's weird. People will share anything with you sometimes. I mean, some people get in and they'll spill their whole life story in 10 minutes, you know.
And that was kind of the premise for the documentary, is like there is this, you know, you're getting in the car with a stranger and you're going to sit down and you're probably never going to see them again. So people, I think, feel really comfortable you know, talking about things that they might not reveal to some of their friends, you know, because it's kind of like therapy with a stranger almost.
Exactly. Yeah, you do kind of get the feeling almost like being a bartender or a therapist. Yeah. Because you never know. You get people in that are having really good days, and you get people that are having just really, really bad days. And they feel, I think a lot of times I'm never going to see this person again, and so they feel free to share with you.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of times there's alcohol involved, so that may loosen people's inhibitions a little bit too to talk with you. And I definitely give dad talks to a lot of my passengers. That's what I call them when I give them advice about doing something or not doing something. So try to keep them straight. So this film, where's the film stand at right now?
I don't know. You can't ask a documentary producer that question, because there's always more you want to add and there's different things you want to do with the edit. But I'm comfortable with where it stands right now. The runtime is about 3 minutes, just a short documentary. And yeah, I'd say it focuses more on you than on rideshare in general, and kind of the brand you've created for yourself in Bowling Green, and just kind of the community's reaction to that is, I hope, what it captures, because I think that's kind of the meat and bones of it all. So yeah, that's where the documentary stands right now, and we'll have the feature length that we've been talking about doing a feature-length documentary, and we'll wrap that up within the year.
There you go. There you go. And then we'll break out into the trilogy.
Yep.
You know, just be like the Star Wars.
And then we got to have the computer game.
There you go. Yeah, got to have the action figure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, make a whole franchise out of this.
Yes. Perfect.
I like the way this is looking for sure. Oh, is there going to be a place where people are going to be able to go and view this?
I'll host it on my website, which is nichuey.com, NICHUEY.com. Shameless self-promotion.
Hey, sure. I'll put links to that in the show notes, and I'll be sure. And once it's out there and ready, I'll post that on my page as well. Cool. And we'll get that out there for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you get kind of interested in making documentaries?
I ended up going to school at WKU from Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta, and I decided that I wanted to go to Western to study photojournalism. We've got a really well-known program here. And my sophomore year at Western in the photojournalism program, I started to take classes in filmmaking, which kind of falls under the photojournalism program. And I was really interested in how you could piece together a story with just gathered video content, audio content, and whatnot. And I'd always really loved watching documentaries. And so it really felt like a natural fit to just kind of start trying to make them on my own. And that has really been the driving force behind my progression in documentary filmmaking is always watching new content and really like absorbing it. I love to watch documentaries, and so yeah, it really does feel like a natural fit to try and make them myself.
Sure. So tell us maybe a little bit about some of the other projects that you worked on, some other films that you've done or things like that.
Earlier in the year, I did a film on a demolition derby driver, and that was pretty awesome. He's a great guy. He just kind of let me tag along for the day as he prepared his car for the derby. Then that night, just the atmosphere. It was at a county fair, so that was really fun. And yeah, it was just a great time. It was like a slice of America that I think a lot of people don't get to see, and that's something I'm really interested in when it comes to documentary stuff, is showing everyday life, showing the reality of everyday life to people who, have no idea kind of what goes on in different parts of the world, different parts of the country. So that was a fun one. And then I'm working on a documentary about a truck stop chapel up I-65 in Glendale. It's actually in an old converted 18-wheeler trailer.
Really?
It's a real narrow chapel. And that's been an interesting project. That should be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks.
Very cool. So all these will be on your website, correct?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So you touched on it a little bit that you're from Atlanta, but tell us a little bit about your background, growing up, and how you kind of ended up at Western.
Let's see. I was born and raised right smack dab in the middle of Atlanta, and I just love that city. I spent my high school years, from the moment I got my license and I could go wherever I wanted in the city. I would just, drive around and explore every last corner. And, I spent a lot of time just driving around Atlanta, riding my bike around Atlanta. I'm really into cycling. So just exploring, the old rail lines that run through the city and all the back alleys of downtown. So that was kind of, I'm a real city boy. That was my upbringing. And then in high school, I was on the yearbook staff, and I was the photo editor. And we had a guy come and talk to our class about photography and photojournalism and whatnot. And he told me, he's like, if this is something you want to pursue in college, you got to go to WKU. Like, that's the place to be. Wasn't even on my radar at that point. And I was a senior. I didn't know really where I wanted to go to school. And so I was like, let's give it a shot. And that's how I ended up here at Western.
Right. So tell me about some of the things that you've been involved with at Western, especially with the photojournalism department?
Yeah, the photojournalism department here has been really, really good to me. It's a tight-knit group of kids, young adults, I should say.
Sure. They look like kids to me.
Yeah. From all over the country. It's a great group to be around because everyone's going through the same struggles, the same, big projects, and everyone's dealing with the same stuff. So you all kind of suffer together and critique each other's work. I mean, on the nights before projects are due, we'll be working in the photojournalism labs until 3, 4 in the morning. Everyone's got their, blankets around them, and you call somebody over, hey, what do you think about these photos? Should I include these in my edit? Did I tone these correctly? How about this caption? Does this caption fit this photo? And same with, documentary stuff. Hey, will you sit down and watch my edit? Does this flow well? Does it have good pacing? Does the music fit right here? And that collaborative environment has been really incredible. I think if I was at another school, I would still be into the same stuff I'm into, but I wouldn't have that community and the support around me that would really encourage me.
Right. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to have a few people from the photojournalism department as passengers, and then I've met some more. Like Reed was one of my passengers. Katrina was one of my passengers, and she's been on the podcast. I met Laurel and Becca just through a story, and then they had me on their podcast. So they do seem like it's a very, very tight-knit group of students that are, all have the same kind of interests, and they really stick together and help each other out, it seems like.
We all work together at the student publications for the newspaper and whatnot. So, yeah, the journalism program as a whole at Western is great.
That's fantastic. So, looking toward the future, what do you want to do after school, and what other projects would you really like to work on, you think?
Let's see. I'll probably move back to Atlanta when I graduate. There's a building in North Georgia. It's a cinder block building with a tin roof, corrugated tin roof, and on the side, somebody has painted with a roller brush, Renegade Championship Wrestling every Saturday night. And it's in a small town called Chatsworth, Georgia. And I really want to go in there and see what this is all about. That's going to be my next project when I move back to Atlanta, I think, is spend a couple of Saturday nights up there. Amateur wrestling.
I'm sure that I've been to a few amateur wrestling matches back in my youth, and they are very interesting. You see some real characters.
Yeah, definitely excited about that.
That's great. So you think you'll end up staying in Atlanta, or would you like to kind of spread out and travel the world a little bit?
I would definitely love to travel. I've traveled a lot of the United States with my friends over the past couple of years. I've been really lucky and able to do that. And I think I would like to do some kind of extended trip, long, maybe 6-month road trip across America or something like that. Do some documentary work along the way. But I think for now, I plan on keeping roots in Atlanta, living there. Sure.
Atlanta's a great city for sure. It's got a lot going on for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the big projects that you were working on just a few weeks ago, that's a big deal for the department, is the mountain workshops. So talk a little bit about it and just your experiences over the years with the different mountain workshops that you've done. It sounds like a really cool experience.
It's one of my favorite things. So every year for the past 43 years, I think we might be on 44 now, the WKU photojournalism department does what's called the mountain workshops. And people in the program travel to a different town in Kentucky and host a photojournalism workshop where people can come in and participate, and we work to document whatever town we're in. So we'll have photographers go out and shoot picture stories about different people, and we'll have documentary filmmakers come and they'll shoot little short documentaries about people. We end up producing a book that we give back to the town as a gift, and we have a website, mountainworkshops.org, that hosts all of our video content and whatnot. And it's an awesome experience because you really spend a week just completely surrounded by people with very similar interests to you, and everyone's in it for the same goal, to document and tell the true, authentic story of the people in these towns, and the stories that would be lost without it. Some of the people that we document are in their 80s and 90s, and nobody's ever recorded their story. Nobody's ever explored their lives and what they've done, and so it's great that we get to do that. Yeah.
It's neat just from watching some of the Instagram pictures that I've seen from some of the people in the department. Mm-hmm. It seems like you're really just like immersed in a boot camp of photojournalism.
Yep.
And people just consume with it for a week.
One of my favorite parts about the workshop is we keep running out of towns to do it in. And so we're forced into smaller and smaller towns and communities, and they don't have really the resources to support an influx of 150 people coming in. So, it's always a struggle to find hotels for people to stay in. One of our biggest struggles is always finding a location to host us, and so because of that, we've ended up in some really strange locations. In Paducah, we were in an abandoned elementary school. We went in and cleaned. We scrubbed the place down. And that was great because we had classrooms, for the different parts of the workshop. We had kind of the gym was like our main.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be a pretty ideal place.
Once we cleaned it up, it worked out pretty well. And I was already fully networked. And so I just tapped into their network.
Didn't have to pull all your cable.
Didn't have to pull cable. And then, where else have we been? We were in Moorhead. We were in a giant, it was a storage area for the volunteer fire department. So we cleared all their equipment out of there, just a big metal kind of warehouse essentially. And that was interesting. It was very loud in there when it rained. And then, let's see, we've been in a converted church and all kinds of places. And we come in, we bring a ton of computers. We network the entire place, and it's always kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So that's exciting.
Sure. Yeah. You said this year y'all were in Cynthiana. Is that correct?
Yep.
And you were kind of set up in a barn.
Yeah. It was very cold. We were in a barn.
Well, that's what you need, all those computers to generate all that heat.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Keep you warm.
Yeah. Like everyone just needs to be rendering things constantly.
Exactly.
To keep your computers
exactly.
as hot as
keep
possible.
them going at max speed all the time.
And we have issues in these buildings with power because these circuits aren't designed for 150 computers,
right?
And so we were blowing the circuit all the time. We were all careful to make sure we were always saving our work because you never know when
you're gonna lose it.
Computer might just click off.
Wow, yeah, that would be frustrating to be like 3/4 of the way through a story and then just lose it completely. I'm sure that would be frustrating.
Yep, Command S, gotta save all the time.
So, yeah, the workshop sounds just like a really cool experience for anybody that's involved in that major or that field. And so you said y'all have done 43 of these?
I think it's 43. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's...
So that's a lot of communities that you've covered.
Oh, yeah. And I love going back and looking at the old books from the 80s and the 90s. It's just really interesting to see how the workshop has grown. Of course, it started out in the film days.
Right.
So, that was all kind of a whole different animal. It used to be that you'd only get a certain number of rolls of film to shoot your project on.
Oh, wow.
And now they've adapted that to the digital era. You're only allowed to turn in a certain number of photographs, kind of keep a limit on you like that. And
here's 4,000 photographs, right?
It makes you a better shooter because you're careful. You don't press the shutter unless it's something you really want to capture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so used to it now. I mean, I certainly grew up in the days of Polaroid pictures and film development, and you were a lot more careful about what you took a picture of than it is now. When you just take 8,000 pictures with your phone, of a butterfly.
And it's funny because now, people, they won't back up their photos. They'll lose their phone.
They do.
All their photos are gone. Yeah, it's funny.
It is. Yeah. We take so many more photographs nowadays, but I don't know how many of those are going to survive through to the next generation or 2 generations from now. Because now, I have shoe boxes full of photos.
Those are going to last forever.
Yeah, from growing up. But I've taken pictures of my kids, and I'm like, I know I've got them stored.
Yeah, in some folder.
Yeah, some folder on some
hard drive.
External hard drive somewhere, or in Google Photos somewhere or something. But then, your hard drive crashes, and you're like, do I have those backed up anywhere?
Those photos are just strings of ones and zeros.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see how much stuff survives. There's nothing like sitting down with a box of just old photographs that you can hold and pass around.
Different experience than swiping through a phone, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And again, I think you're just so much more careful about what you took a picture of back then. It's now you can just take 8,000 pictures.
Yeah, everyone's a photographer.
Exactly.
Everyone's got a phone in their pocket.
Exactly. Wow. So it sounds like photojournalism has been a really good experience at Western for you.
Yeah, no doubt.
I know growing up, I've always heard good things about that department, and it seems like they've won a lot of awards. I know the Herald has won just tons of awards over the years, so I know it's a good program. What advice would you maybe have somebody who is looking to get into that same sort of career?
It is you got to be ready to really commit yourself to projects. If something comes up with a subject that you're documenting, you got to be ready to throw off all plans that you had set. Forget about that party Saturday night. If something is happening that you need to document, you gotta be there. It's a big commitment. A lot of long nights editing, working on projects. And let's see, in terms of advice, I think just one thing that WKU PJ has taught me a lot is how to be a better listener. If you really want to get to the root of people's stories and what they're about, you got to have open ears and really think about meaningful questions and whatnot. And so I've thought a lot about myself and bettering my listening skills. I would say that's something that is important coming into the program. Advice. I haven't thought too much about that one.
That's all right. I like to ask just a few questions usually on my podcast that not so much have to do with anything in particular that we've talked about before. I know you really are involved and enjoy your work in photojournalism. Besides that, though, what's something in life that maybe inspires you?
Inspires me. I don't know if it's necessarily inspiration, but I guess it is. I love riding my bicycle. If I'm not shooting or working on a project, editing something, probably riding my bike around. It's a great way to clear my head. It's allowed me to explore parts of cities that I never would have gotten to see from a car. And I really love the pace of being on a bike because you can cover a fair amount of ground, but it's not like you're in a car and things are just whizzing by, If you want to pull off, down a side road or, go down a little trail, you find it's very quick. You can just do it. In a car, you got to park and then go do that. So that's really what I spend a lot of my free time doing is exploring Bowling Green, Atlanta, just on my bike. And I got a lot of friends in the cycling community, and that's kind of what we do.
That's neat. Yeah. I've always enjoyed riding. I don't ride as much as I used to, but it is. Like I said, you can cover so much more ground than you can walking. So you feel like you're accomplishing something, but you don't have to worry about parking your car.
Oh, yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And you're out in the elements, and you see things and notice things you wouldn't see if you're driving.
Things. Yeah, it's a total sensory experience that you miss out being in a car.
You do, very much so.
And it's when you stop at a stop sign or at a stoplight on your bike, you wave to the pedestrians. They're right next to you,
Right.
You feel way more in touch with the city and your surroundings when you're on a bike. You're just out there in the open.
Definitely.
And then you get to your destination, you don't have to pay for parking. You just lock it up and walk inside.
Yeah, very nice. If you can kind of shape and plan out your future, like kind of how you wanted it, what would your future look like? If you had kind of, I know we can influence it, but we can't totally control it.
Yeah.
If you could, what would that look like for you? If you could plan it out.
If I could be a freelance documentary producer, documentary filmmaker, and work on projects kind of on my own time, that would be, quite a privilege. Let's see. I would love to have time off to do a lot of camping, a lot of stuff in the woods. I'm really into bike packing, which is essentially backpacking on a bicycle, going through the woods. I really enjoy that. I'd love to have time to travel and see the world, document it. I've always said I want to do documentary films and work like that and kind of production work to pay the bills, but, kind of always keep a camera on me and just document my, travels and day-to-day life.
Sure.
I mean, that'd be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good way to go if you can arrange that. And, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are able to do that these days.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of take your camera and shoot your way across the world, I guess.
Yep. That would be a dream.
Yep. It's like I'm going to lift my way across the United States.
yeah. That would be awesome. You're going to have to let me know if you do that, because that's a documentary right there.
Hey, yeah, it's once I retire from my day job, that's something I definitely going to look at. I think that'd be a neat way to see the country. Stay for a day or two. Drive a few people around.
Yep.
Talk to them about that town,
that area.
Hey, how long have you been here? What's special about this place?
I have always wanted to just drop in different towns in America and say, what's the big thing going on right now that everyone's kind of whispering about? What's the town gossip? What's the news? Yeah. I think that'd be fascinating.
Project.
I mean, you would turn up some of the craziest stories.
I'm
no
sure.
doubt. I mean, yeah. Oh man, I couldn't even imagine some of the stories you'd hear asking questions like that.
Oh yeah, you drop in these little small towns and you hear these just outrageous stories of what's going on.
Yep. It's the stuff that great documentaries are made of.
That's true. Well, Nick, I just want to say thank you so much for working with me on this project, asking me to be involved in this project.
Thank you for working with me.
It was just a ton of fun. It was great having somebody to hang out with in the car. Like I said, we're usually just out there by ourselves, and it was great to get to know you and see some of your work. And I think the guys on the Telegram are going to miss you.
Oh, yeah. You'll have to give them a final goodbye from me.
Definitely. We'll do that after we get off here. Yeah. But I do appreciate it very much. I wish you good luck and everything. And I'll definitely post links to your page on the show page and on my Instagram, and let everybody find a way that they can take a look at your work.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate it, Nick.
I appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
It's time for the interesting story of the week.
This episode's interesting story of the week happened to me about 2 years ago. It was a Saturday night, and I was picking up a couple of passengers down at one of the local bars on the square. I rolled up, and two young ladies came out and got in the car, and as we're driving away, they're talking to each other, and then they asked me if I would mind doing a round trip to their apartment and back. They said they just needed to run inside real quick and grab something. And I said, sure, that'd be fine. And she says, yeah, we just need to go home. I need to grab our cocaine money. And so I'm like, okay. And during the ride to the apartment, they're discussing how much money they need for their cocaine. And they're kind of debating back and forth. And they decided they really only needed like $40, but they're going to get $80 just in case. And so we roll up to the apartment. I pull in, and sure enough, one of them runs inside real quick and comes back out in about a minute or two. And so we head back downtown. And as we're heading back downtown, they're talking in the back. And then they're kind of whispering to each other, and I can't really understand what they're saying. And, I'm just driving. So then one of them kind of leads forward, and she said, hey, we've got an idea. How about we go back to the bar, you drive us to the bar, and then wait outside, and we'll run in and we'll buy our cocaine, and then we'll come back, and the three of us can go back to our apartment and party tonight. I was like, no, I appreciate the offer, but no, I think I'm gonna have to pass on that. I don't think that would be a good idea for me. I'm extremely happily married and old enough to be your dad, but I appreciate the offer, and they were really nice about it. They're like, oh, okay. And, we thought it might be fun. But it really caught me by surprise. Certainly not something that I was expecting. But I've had a similar thing happen one other time. And maybe I'll cover that in another interesting story of the week. I want to thank my guest, Nic, once more. I really appreciate him touching base with me and asking me to be involved and collaborate with him on his documentary film about rideshare. It was a lot of fun having him. I got to know him. He's a really great guy. And like I said, really talented, and I think he's got great things ahead of him. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, please take time to go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pandora or wherever you listen to this podcast at and leave a review and a rating. The reviews are a big help because that helps boost us up in the search rankings and it helps expose the show to more listeners. I want to thank you so much for listening. As always, God bless and stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to Lifting with Larry. To subscribe to the podcast, check out other episodes, and keep up to date, head to liftingwithlarry.com.